Okay, picture this. You've been sitting at your desk for literally hours, right? You're poring over your textbooks, taking super detailed notes, and basically turning the page into a neon coloring book of highlights because you've got a massive exam tomorrow. You feel super productive. But then, a week later, you realize you've completely forgotten a staggering 80% of what you just studied. 80%! That's almost a whole shebang. Look, if you're not in your head right now, I just want to validate how incredibly frustrating that feels. But here's the crazy good news. Forgetting that much information? It's not a motivation problem. Actually, scratch that. It is entirely a method problem.
So, welcome to today's explainer. I am genuinely so excited to guide you through this, because we are going to completely dismantle the traditional way you've been taught to study. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what's fundamentally broken about your current routine, and more importantly, we're going to replace those broken habits with 3 incredibly powerful science-backed shifts to help you truly master learning. We're doing this with absolutely zero fluff, just the proven strategies that actually work. Okay, let's dive right in. Here's exactly where we're headed today. We'll start by looking at the passive learning trap. Then we'll hit our 3 big shifts: active recall, spaced repetition, and the Feynman technique, before wrapping it all up with your ultimate action plan.
So, kicking things off with the passive learning trap, we really need to analyze these universally taught methods we all picked up in school because, frankly, they're setting us up to fail.
This right here? This brilliantly illustrates exactly what school taught you to do. Notice this super familiar loop. First, you read the chapter. Second, you highlight the important parts. Third, you reread those highlights, maybe jot down a few notes and cram it all in the night before. And step 4? Yeah, you forget it. Here's what the science of memory tells us about this exact loop. While reading and highlighting make you feel super productive in the moment, they're basically useless for long-term retention. We call this passive learning. Your brain is just sitting there receiving information. It isn't being challenged at all. And here's the golden rule of memory. Your brain absolutely does not store what it doesn't struggle with.
So why do we keep falling for this? Well, it's a cognitive trap called the illusion of knowing. It happens when you read a page, the words feel incredibly familiar, and your brain instantly tricks you, whispering, "Yep, got it, I know this." It's like a scam your brain is running on you, because mere familiarity is absolutely not the same thing as actual memory. Recognizing a concept on a page is vastly different from being able to pull that concept out of your own head when you're sitting in a cold exam room.
Which brings us to our solutions. Let's look at shift 1, active recall. The rule here is simple. Test, don't reread. If passive reading doesn't work, we need a complete pivot. Notice the clear contrast here between passive and active learning. We know passive is just kind of passively receiving the data, but active learning, that's about testing yourself. It's retrieving data and literally forcing your brain to struggle. Instead of rereading your notes, you close them and you try to write down everything you remember completely from scratch. And you know, the research on this is just overwhelming. Students who use active recall retain up to 50% more information than those who just reread. 50%. Why? Because that mental struggle, that uncomfortable friction of trying to remember, is the exact mechanism that forces your brain to build stronger neural connections. It's basically like going to the gym for your brain.
So here's your first practical move. After every single lecture or chapter you read, give yourself just 5 minutes. Put away your notes, put down your phone, grab a totally blank page, and just write down the 3 most important things you just learned, completely from scratch. Let me be real with you. Those 5 minutes of focused mental sweat are worth way more to your long-term memory than 2 hours of mindlessly rereading the text.
Let's move on to shift 2, spaced repetition. This is where we learn exactly why you need to stop cramming. Because retrieving information is only half the battle. The other half is when you retrieve it.
Think about cramming for a second. It just stuffs information into short-term storage long enough to pass a test, and then your brain completely dumps it. That's not learning. Spaced repetition works completely differently. Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is that you review the material today on day 1, then you do it again on day 3, then day 7, then day 14. You're deliberately reviewing the information precisely as you are about to forget it. Every time your memory curve starts to dip, boom, you spike it back up with a review. That timing radically strengthens the memory. And this isn't just a fun theory. This is exactly how polyglots learn complex languages, it's how top surgeons remember insanely complicated medical procedures, and it's how top-tier students manage to study for fewer hours while remembering significantly more.
So, practically speaking, how do we pull this off daily? Honestly, just download an app called Anki. It's completely free. Whenever you study, build about 10 flashcards per topic. The sheer genius of Anki is that you don't have to micromanage that timeline we just looked at. The app's built-in algorithm automatically spaces your reviews out for you based on how hard a card was to remember. By doing this, studying just 15 minutes a day will absolutely crush a stressful 3-hour cram session the night before, every single time.
All right, moving right along to Shift 3, the Feynman technique, or teaching to learn. This final shift is anchored around a legendary study method from the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman.
Einstein actually hit the nail on the head with this famous quote, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it yet." Feynman's whole philosophy was to learn something, and then immediately try to explain it as if he were teaching a 12-year-old. Why a 12-year-old? Because the second you try to explain something simply, without hiding behind fancy vocabulary words, every single gap in your understanding is instantly exposed. You immediately realize which words you don't actually get, which logical steps you completely glossed over, and which parts you only thought you knew because they looked familiar on the page. This is the exact reason study groups are so effective. Not because you're stealing answers from your friends, but because the physical act of explaining forces clarity in your own brain.
So what's your practical move for this one? After you study a new concept, pull out your phone, open the Voice Memo app, and just record a 2-minute voice note explaining that concept as simply as humanly possible. Strip away all the jargon, no complex terms. If you hit a wall and find yourself stammering, well, you've got to be honest with yourself, you don't know it yet. You have to go back to the material and actively fill in that specific gap.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground today. Let's pull this all together in our final section, the ultimate action plan. We're going to rapidly recap the rule of 3 to really cement these concepts in your mind before we head out. So here are the 3 distinct shifts you need to make right now. 1. Stop rereading and start using active recall. Test yourself by writing down what you remember completely from scratch, 0 notes allowed. 2. Ditch the cramming and use spaced repetition. Let the Anki app space out your reviews over days and weeks, so you aren't panicking at 2 a.m. the night before the test. And 3. Stop hiding behind big words. Use the Feynman technique. Record yourself explaining the material simply to expose your blind spots. Remember, if you can't explain it, you haven't learned it.
I want to leave you with one final kind of provocative challenge right now. Pick just one single thing you studied this week. Close your notes. Grab a totally blank piece of paper. Can you write down what you remember? Right this exact second. Give it a shot. That simple, slightly uncomfortable struggle, that is the absolute beginning of true learning. Hey, if you found this explainer useful and you want more completely fluff-free strategies on how to learn faster and master your mind, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.